Welcome, everybody, to Congregation Va-Dor's Touch of Torah. This evening is October 25th, Tuesday evening, and we have Rabbi Barry Silver leading us for this Torah study and the study of Genesis, and the Parsha is Noach, or you might know it as Noah. Take it away, Rabbi.
Thank you so much. That was a very nice beginning. There was one word that was conspicuously absent in the Hebrew rendition, Noach, Ish, Tzaddik, and you might be familiar with some of those words. Noach, of course, is Noah. Ish is a man. Isha is woman. Tzaddik is related to tzedek. It means righteous. They left out a word. Noach, Ish, Tzaddik, B'dorotav. Dor is generation, as in Va-Dor, Va-Dor. B'dor is in generation, and B'dorotav in his generation. That word is key. As my dad used to explain it, compared to all the other people of his generation, he was a righteous man. Compared to people of other generations, he wasn't all that righteous at all. So they left out the word to try to make it seem like he was more righteous than he really was. Let me explain what I mean by that. Noah was, according to the Torah, righteous in his generations, but people wonder, why wasn't he the first Jew? If he had a covenant with God, if he walked with God, v'hitalech im Elohim, why wouldn't he be the first Jew? That honor was reserved for Abraham, who came after him. Why? Because Noah was told by God, I'm going to destroy all the people on earth, every last one of them, all your relatives, all your friends, everyone you've ever known, except for your kids and their wives. I'm also going to destroy all the animals on earth by a flood. Noah doesn't complain or argue. He doesn't say, why would you do such a horrible thing? Maybe there's something less drastic. He just says, tell me how high to build the ark, and I'll build the ark. You know, like when you say, tell me how high, and he jumps that high. Tell me how high to build the ark, and he builds the ark. Not a word challenging God's decree. What happened with Abraham? If you recall, God said to Abraham, I'm not going to destroy the whole world. I'm just going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham instantly said, you can't do that. That's not right. How could a God of justice kill the innocent with the guilty? How could you do such a thing? Please let me go out among these wicked cities and try to find some people. And if I can find 10, will you save the cities? Eventually he bargained and he said 10, yes. What did Moses do? God said to Moses, I'm going to destroy the Jewish people when they're worshiping the golden calf. Moses says, no, destroy me. I'm their leader. He goes to bat for other people, even though they abused him. Not Noah. Noah was righteous in his generation, but he was not qualified to be the first Jew because he cared only about himself and his immediate family. That's the first thing I want to point out. The other thing is that this has been a rather frustrating day for me. So I had been looking forward for a long time to a debate. It's not often that you find a Republican who's willing to debate a Democrat or me. It doesn't happen much at all. We did find one who agreed to debate in front of a intellectual group of Jewish retired people. He was not brave enough to record it. Otherwise, you would have seen some amazing footage, and I can't blame him. I started out the debate saying that this man is the bravest person I know. He's actually willing to defend the actions of the Republican Party in front of an audience. And from there, it went downhill. And let me explain why. I was sadly surprised to see among Jewish intelligentsia a large number of people who dispute basic facts and science. First of all, they trivialize the insurrection, or as my debating counterpart said, an insurrection, it was only one person died, and that was a person who was shot by the police. It wasn't an insurrection. So he's actually an insurrection denier. But what was especially troubling is that a fairly large number of people, Jewish people, supposedly intelligent people, denied climate change. And instead of being able to talk about the issues of the day, I had to spend probably half the time defending basic science against pure, unadulterated ignorance and brainwashing. And you start to wonder, why would Jewish people succumb to this? How is it that people who are supposed to be well-educated would be so ignorant? I have the answer for you. It's right here. And I'm going to take a little time to read this to you. This is from the National Jewish Outreach Program by Rabbi Ephraim Buchwald. He has come out with some real doozies, irrational things that don't make any sense at all. I contacted him and I said, let's debate, let's discuss, let's exchange views. He would have none of it. And I can't really blame him. So let me just share with you a little bit about what he says. This is the Orthodox view on Noah's Ark. This coming week's Torah portion, Parashat Noach, that features the famous flood story, is a truly intriguing portion. Academic and scholarly literature speak of the story of the flood as if it were a myth or a fairy tale. From the Jewish perspective, it is not only a fascinating narrative, but is also a parasha that is replete with groundbreaking insights and profound messages for mankind. It is not at all surprising that many of the ancient Near East documents contain parallels to the story of the flood. Perhaps the most famous is the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, which tells the story of a man named Utnapishtim. In the epic narrative, the gods decide to destroy the earth. There's a great flood, and Utnapishtim, who is the favorite of one of the gods, O, is saved. O, E-A-U, is where we get the word water in French. Of course, if there really was a flood that inundated the ancient Near East, quite a few striking parallels between the epic of Gilgamesh and the Torah story of Noah are to be expected. And yet, despite the parallels, the stories are profoundly different. In the Babylonian story, the gods arbitrarily decide to destroy the earth as if humanity is a plaything. Furthermore, the gods chose to save Utnapishtim only because he's a favorite of theirs, not because he's moral, righteous, or more deserving. Now, let me clarify a few things. What he's trying to say is that the fact that Jewish mythology emerged out of Babylonian mythology, which historians know indicates the fact that this wasn't written by God, it's myth, he cites as evidence that the story must be true. Otherwise, why would the Babylonians have the same myth? Which doesn't really make any sense. He also doesn't quite get it right. In the Gilgamesh story, the gods destroy humanity because they're too noisy. They're making a racket down there and the gods can't think straight and they decide to get rid of humanity. His basic point is somewhat correct, that there wasn't a moral component to it. In Judaism, when the story hits Judaism, it becomes moral. Noah is saved because he's righteous, and the world is punished or wiped out because it's corrupt. So that part is somewhat accurate. What's intriguing is that in the Gilgamesh story, the people are making too much noise, and the name Noach means quiet. And Noach was chosen to be saved because he was quiet. It's very interesting that that aspect of the story is retained in Noah's name. Then it goes on. The Torah revolutionizes the flood story and adds what is most significant, a moral element. So far, so good. It's not that God arbitrarily decides to destroy the world. Rather, the world had become corrupt and self-destructive. Noah himself is described, Ish Tzaddik Tamim, a righteous person. Again, he leaves out B'dorotav, in his generation, but he does say who is perfect in his generation. So he says it, but he doesn't really clarify. In fact, it says about Noah that he walked with God. Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to the Midrashic tradition, now put on your seatbelts now. Once they say according to the Midrashic tradition, what that means is you're about to hear fairy tales upon fairy tales. Okay, so the Torah is mythology, but then you have rabbis, often unknown rabbis, who just make up things out of thin air to try to make the story sound a little more plausible or to teach a lesson. And all of these stories that have absolutely no basis anywhere in evidence are now accepted as gospel truth. So it's a midrash, and that means it's true, according to the Orthodox. According to the midrashic tradition, Noah builds an ark for 120 years. Okay, so that's not in the Torah. It's not anywhere. It's made up. To give the people a chance to repent. You see, God comes across pretty harsh in this, so they make up things to make them seem better. Oh, they had 120 years to repent. People pass by and ask Noah, what are you doing? He replies, I'm building an ark. The world is going to be flooded because of the evil deeds of the people. Noah enters the ark with his wife, his 3 sons and daughters-in-law. Once they are in the ark, God waits an additional 7 days before bringing the waters of the flood. Again, nothing like that in the Torah. Again, a delay, giving the people an additional opportunity to repent. And even when it rains, the Torah states that this Torah states, implying that the rain started to fall lightly, indicating that the Almighty would have reversed his decision and stopped the flood had the people only repented, but they did not. No evidence of this either. It rains for 40 days and 40 nights. Meanwhile, Noah has to care for all the animals that are on the ark. Although the rain stops after the 40 days, Noah, in fact, has to wait a full year for the earth to dry. Nothing like that in the Torah either. So he just casually says he took care of all the animals in the ark. One might wonder, how did he take care of all the feces? How did he feed all the animals? How did he prevent the animals from eating each other? More importantly, how did he fit all the animals on the planet in an ark, which if you read according to how many cubits high and wide and long it was, is enough to fit 2 full-size whales and nothing more? How does he fit all those animals in that enclosure? Well, that part isn't quite explained. The earth is now dry, and Noah's remarkable inaction is recorded in the Torah. After caring for all the animals for a full year, and somehow finding food for them in ways that, we don't know, feeding and cleansing them, living with elephants, bulls, and orangutans, 365 days have passed. God says to Noah, Noah, get out of the ark. You and your wife and your sons and your daughter-in-law. Can you imagine? After being cooped up in the ark, the horrible and smelly ark for a full year, God has to command Noah to get out of the ark. Now, then he says, after giving thanks to God and offering sacrifices, the Torah informs us Noah's first reaction after the flood was to begin to plant a vineyard. All this is very nice, but what does Noah plant? A vineyard. And he drank of the wine, he became drunk. Noah wallowed in the muck of his tent. So Noah, instead of planting crops, plants wine and gets drunk. Now, this rabbi, he whitewashes it all and explains it all. Well, of course he got drunk. He went through a big ordeal. And so naturally he wanted to have a little bit of wine to celebrate. In this state of inebriation, Noah, who is terribly vulnerable, something shocking happens. Okay, now, here's the part that's more insidious. The Torah records that Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Yafet. The Torah text always referred to Ham as Avi Canaan. Ham, that means the father of Canaan. The Torah reports that when Noah was well inebriated, Ham, Avi Canaan, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his two brothers outside. The rabbis note that the expression to see a person's nakedness often implies a sexual encounter. So it doesn't say anything about a sexual encounter. It just says he saw his father's nakedness. In fact, they suggest Ham did not just see his father's nakedness or merely mock his father, but that he actually sodomized or emasculated his father and went and told his brothers. He said to them, "Come see our father the drunk. Noah, the survivor, has become a vegetable, can't face reality. He's a plain drunk." Nothing like this is in the Torah. This is made up stuff about him saying, "Come see our father the drunk." He sodomized him, he castrated him. But here's what's interesting. In the story of Gilgamesh, that's precisely what happens with Gilgamesh. He's castrated, which is actually an ancient aspect of mythology of the Persians, the Sumerians, the Egyptians. They're just fixated on this castration thing. It's nowhere in the Torah. Here's where it gets sinister. Ham is always referred to, as he says, as the father of Canaan. And the rabbi here is at pains to figure out why. How could this be? Why would he refer to him that? I don't understand that. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that the Jews were ordered to wipe out the Canaanites. Now, that doesn't seem like a very nice thing to do. It doesn't seem like a nice thing for God to order them to do, but they did it. They wiped out the Canaanites. He doesn't even stop to think, maybe these stories were told to justify genocide. That never occurs to him, that the ancestors of the Jews who were involved in a struggle to commit genocide against the Canaanites would have attributed some fault to their ancestor to justify it. That's done every single day in the Torah. Anytime you want to justify genocide, you say that their ancestor did something wrong. It's the oldest trick in the book. This rabbi can't even imagine that, or it doesn't understand why he's referred to that way. But it gets worse. He's always the son called Ham. Ham is Hebrew for warm. Ham, according to the Torah, is the ancestor of the African peoples. Shem, Ham, and Japhet are the three sons of Noah. Shem is where we get Semites. That's the ancestor of the Middle Eastern people, including the Jews. Ham is the ancestor of the Africans, which were known to the Jewish people. And Japhet comes from the word, we think, Yafeh, meaning pretty. That's the Europeans or the Greeks that they were familiar with, who created pretty things, or maybe they had blonde hair, so they looked pretty to them. So the Africans are associated with this grave sin against Noah. And then the punishment is you will be a slave to your brothers. Isn't that convenient that the Southerners in the United States said, we're doing God's will? The Africans, according to the Bible, are meant to be the slaves of the other people. And you now wonder, why is it that slavery was biggest in the Bible Belt? Wherever you have fundamentalist Christianity, you had slavery. And it was tried to be abolished by people who liberated themselves from this thinking. Of course, Rabbi Buchwald says nothing about all of this. He has no issues about it. It's all a beautiful, lovely, wonderful story. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but I will read this. The story of the flood is not at all a myth. It is a fascinating historical record, replete with incredibly revolutionary insights, as is the entire Torah. As with all of Torah, it must be studied and constantly reviewed, for in it we shall find the most profound secrets of human behavior and human relations. So these are the human relations that he's interested in perpetuating. You can now understand why he wouldn't want to debate or discuss this with somebody else. This story is pure myth from one end to the other. As I mentioned, the ark isn't big enough for all of the animals. There was no food for all of the animals. The animals had no way of finding their way to Noah's ark from Antarctica, the penguins, or the koala bears, or the kangaroos in Australia, or the bison swimming across the ocean to get to Noah's ark. And they had no way of getting back. When the ark landed, how would they know where to go back to? The story is so obviously fiction that if you teach someone that this is not a myth, what you've done is you've now destroyed their capacity for rational thought, and you've created a person who is ripe to be brainwashed. I bring you back now to my discussion this morning with right-wing Jews who are telling me that climate change is not real and that the insurrection never happened. You wonder, how could people believe such utter ridiculous nonsense? And now we know. You can thank Rabbi Buchwald and the other Orthodox rabbis of his ilk for training a sizable number of Jewish people to be ripe for the picking for the next demagogue to come along and to tell them a bunch of nonsense, which they will accept as true. Yes, Sharon.
So how did you, this is Rabbi Buchwald. He's an Orthodox rabbi, and you just found it on the internet, or he wrote you?
I'm on his email list. He sends this out to, I believe, many thousands of people, the National Jewish Outreach Program. And I am sorry if I'm a little bit dark today, but I had a very, very frustrating experience this morning with people shouting me down and not even allowing me to complete my summation because they were so interested in trying to cut me off. And it was very frustrating to see this among Jewish people. And I consider this to be a clear and present danger to our people and to our country, because Jewish people should be the light to the nations. And when a sizable number of our people are subverted in this way, there's a little hope that we could accomplish our mission. But yeah, it's on the internet. Go look them up and you can find it too.
I know exactly. You just said it was NJOP. So NJOP are the presenters of the Read Hebrew America program,
right.
and
We
all
actually,
that. Yeah.
Right,
Shabbat across America, all those things. So
we participate with them.
Yeah, we
do. They have a very, very large outreach. This is not a fringe group that are hearing that Noah's Ark is not a myth. This is a large group of people influenced by this. Go ahead, Harris.
Unmute you. Go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are.
First of all, I can understand why nobody would want to debate you, because they would always lose. Number two, the biggest bunch of bull is Noah's Ark. I mean, how can you believe the Bible when Noah's Ark doesn't make sense?
Well, it is bull. It's also elephants and tigers and bears, but how would they even get the bulls in there, and what would they eat?
Exactly.
Each other.
Right. It's really sad. And also, I fault people like Rabbi Buchwald, and teaching this as not a myth but fact. I fault him for driving Jews away from Judaism. I think he's driven away far more Jews than he's brought in, because any Jew with a brain is going to read this and think this is nonsense. And if they don't know that alternatives exist, if they think, oh, this is what Judaism is, it's believing a bunch of nonsense, he's going to drive people, and I'm sure he's driven a lot of people away. I have to deal with a lot of the human wreckage of people say, yeah, I was raised Orthodox and I wasn't interested in Judaism. And then I found out about you, or I found out about other people, and you have to do a lot of repair work to bring people back in after they hear this stuff. Anybody else?
I wanted to offer something. If you go on the internet and you look up rational Judaism, Rabbi, you find many hits. Um, so perhaps we can find out about these other synagogues or congregations and see if they're on the same page as us or similar page as us, and possibly work to being united in some way with them.
That's a very good idea. I think that should be one of our priorities. I have reached out to others who have a rational point of view, but not in any systematic way. But I think that's a very, very good idea. A lot of the efforts to do this are not pure science. They kind of debauch science or prostitute science to use it to fit their preconceived notions. Like even Jonathan Sacks, the head rabbi, Orthodox rabbi of England, said that Genesis and Noah's Ark are consistent with science. So the fact that they claim to be rational or science-based doesn't necessarily mean they are. But certainly humanistic Jews and some Reconstructionists are, and I think that's an excellent suggestion to reach out to them. Go ahead,
Rabbi-
Peter.
Oh,
Barry, I was thinking about this a week ago, but I didn't get a chance to ask you this. How many other rabbis do you know, are like you? Because last week you talked about taking the approach or a scientific approach to religion. And I am 100% in agreement with you, because I have in the past stated on Zoom during a meeting how I felt about what the Orthodox believe in. And I'm not one, and I'm Jewish. I was raised Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed. And for so many decades, I believed in these fairy tales. So my question again is, how many rabbis do you know are like you? See, that's what I'm interested in learning or finding out, if there is a number, if you know of any, because there was a saying that I once read in a book about financial trading, and it somewhat applies to gaining the knowledge and believing in the knowledge and having the desire to believe in the knowledge. And that saying was, never mind the cheese, let me out of the trap. And what that meant was that if you take a big position, whatever it may be, whatever financial vehicle you're trading, and the market goes against you, the cheese is the ability to profit, to make the money, to be on the right side of the market. But when the market goes against you, the author said, never mind the cheese, let me out of the trap, because once it goes against you, you don't want the cheese anymore. So all these people, Jewish people, are believing in the cheese, so to speak. They want the cheese, they want to believe, but it's like I've reached a point where I've said, I don't want the cheese anymore. I don't want the fairy tales anymore. Yeah. So let's get back to my question.
It's not just Jewish people.
Right.
Christians also believe in the cheese. They believe in Jesus of Nazareth. So let me attempt to answer your question. When you say how many rabbis are like me,
right?
If you're going to ask how many rabbis don't believe in the story of Noah's Ark, how many rabbis don't believe in the God of the Torah, the number would be quite high.
Really?
I would say of all the rabbis across the denominations, considering every denomination around, I would say more than half of them do not believe in the God of the Torah or Noah's Ark. However, if you mean like me in that they actually say what they think and say what they believe, that number becomes very, very small. So most rabbis, I don't believe, actually think Noah's Ark was true, but very few are going to say that. You might ask, well, why wouldn't they say that? And you have to look at what they're doing as a business and a profession. If a rabbi were to get up in front of their congregation and say the story of Noah's Ark is a myth, and oh, and by the way, the God of the Bible doesn't exist either, two things would happen. One, they would lose a lot of members because some of the members like to believe these things. And two, they would be chastised by the board, most likely. And if they persisted, they'd be fired. How do I know that? Because that's what happened to me. I said the exact same thing that I'm saying now. We lost many members who were very, very upset. And I was chastised and ultimately fired by the board for saying that. Now, in the case of Va-Dor, something remarkable happened. The congregants came out en masse as soon as I was fired and showed up at the next Friday night and demanded the resignation of the board. That does not happen often. I've never heard of it happening, but that is why this is not done. The donations would dry up. And even in a Reform congregation, which their official position is that the God of the Torah doesn't exist and Noah's Ark doesn't exist, they pay lip service to it because they don't want to lose members or get people alienated. Now, for instance, when I mention that there's no supernatural being in the sky watching over us, you would be surprised how many people in our congregation, especially in the past, said to me, look, I don't believe in that either. But these other poor saps, they need that crutch. They need to believe that. You shouldn't be saying that. So I said, let me get this straight. I'm saying something that you agree with. You don't think that what I'm saying is incorrect, but you want me to lie to people because you think they need that to help them. And it's surprising how many people believe that. So I am inspired by the Jewish prophets who believed in the human mind and the capacity for emet vatzedek, truth and righteousness, that if we apply our minds to truth and righteousness, there's no stopping us as a species. We can accomplish great things. My father was very committed to that. And the Reform movement was committed to that in its early days when it was filled with the excitement and exuberance of Charles Darwin. But it's now become Orthodox light. And I'm also inspired by the four horsemen of atheism, who are very strident in speaking their mind, often in a rather amusing way, which I can't really hold a candle to them, but I try. So that's a long answer to your question. There's very, very, very few who speak out about it, and none that I know of who really go out of their way to make a point of it. And I do it because, like I say, I see the connection. Noah's Ark really happened, and it's not a myth, and climate change isn't happening. And Trump is the greatest president of all, just like my rabbi who spins midrashes and makes things up out of thin air. They're telling the truth. I see a complete, total connection with that. And I think we have to break the spell, which was the name of the book of one of the four horsemen of atheism, Breaking the Spell. The other one was the God Delusion. And they inspire me. Go ahead, Harris.
Well, one of the smartest persons that ever lived, Albert Einstein, came out against all the bull, and he didn't believe any of that stuff. And he wasn't religious at all. He was just a Jew by name.
Well, I've read many books on Einstein. And so let me just share with you.
I have never read any.
Okay, so let me just share with you that Einstein, as you say, completely rejected a personal God. He completely rejected the idea of heaven and hell and thought the whole concept was for feeble minds. The idea of a personal God he thought was laughable. But Einstein was really my inspiration when I came up with cosmic Judaism, because he discussed cosmic religion. So to suggest that he didn't believe in religion, actually, he believes in it very strongly. He even created a term for the type of religion that he believed in, which he summarized with the phrase, science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. So he actually said science without religion is lame. He also said that the religious impulse is behind all of science, all of human progress. It's behind love. He believed in the impulse to get a sense of the mysterious. And he said, he who is without that, they are dead inside, like a snuffed out candle. And then he said these words. The idea of God went through 3 phases. First, he was a scary monster, an ogre, and we had to sacrifice because he had this bloodlust, and we had to give him some blood and killing so that he wouldn't kill us and accept this instead. Then he was like a father figure who rewarded the good and punished the bad. And then human beings evolved and the concept evolved so that now, he said, we get a glimpse of something wondrous, something remarkable that's behind all of this. He called it a cosmic religious experience. That's what he described, that you get maybe in the face of a beautiful scene of nature, or falling in love, or hitting a tennis ball the perfect way, or shooting a basket, or all of these what we call aha experiences. You get a sense, wow, there's something wondrous going on. And he said that's a cosmic religious experience. My goal as a rabbi is to try to help people experience that through words, through music, through experiences, through science, and through other means. So that's a very long answer to Einstein's view of religion, which really inspires me and inspires cosmic Judaism, which the phrase he actually coined. Anybody else? I think we've had a very thorough discussion and conversation about the story of Noah. I'll just say this about Noah. I started out saying what Noah isn't about. Let me say what Noah is about and what lessons Noah does teach us, none of which were mentioned by the good Rabbi Buchwald. But Noah lived at a time when everybody was going astray. What was righteous about him? He did not follow the crowd. He had the ability to just say Noah. Or in Spanish, the word for Noah is no way. So people were doing bad things and he said, no way. That's a great lesson for us. And it's a great lesson for our children if we teach it properly. Don't follow the crowd. Don't do what everybody's doing. Do what everybody should be doing. Because if you follow the crowd, you might be following them over a cliff or into destruction. That's what it means to be Jewish. To do the right thing, not to do necessarily what's the popular thing. Another lesson is care for the animals. Noah was the savior and the protector for all of the animals. And that's a good metaphor for how we should be. Another metaphor, we're all in the same boat. If anybody were to put a hole in that boat on one side, all of life would have been destroyed. So we're all in the same boat. Another beautiful aspect of this story, at the end, when there's a rainbow, God says, this is a symbol between me and who? Noah? No. Me and all humanity? No. This is a symbol, a covenant between me and all living things. Never again will I destroy the earth. Meaning that if God enters a covenant with all living things, that means they have status. To have a covenant means that other must have legal status. And so all living things have status in God's eyes, and God, or you could say instead of God, our epitome of perfection, believes that all living things have worth and should not be destroyed. That's a really beautiful lesson. He said, never again will I destroy the earth with a flood of water. but it doesn't say never again will I prevent you from destroying your planet with a flood of water and rising tides. Very interesting how that was phrased. So I think there's a lot of good lessons in Noah's Ark, especially the Jewish belief that we should do what is right, not necessarily what is popular. That has been really the story of Judaism from time immemorial. And it's a beautiful lesson for us today. Thanks, everybody. It was a pleasure being on with you. Thanks for your participation. This has been recorded. So if you have any friends who you want to share this with, if they're interested in knowing about what we do and maybe a critique of orthodoxy and or anything else, have them tune in. Thanks a lot, everybody, for participating. And thank you, Sharon, for arranging this. And have a good evening and watch the debate. Debate should be pretty interesting tonight. And I got quite a few articles on politics, which I'm not putting on the Lador Va-Dor website, but because that would be politicizing Lador Va-Dor. But I got some good ones on my website, rabbibarrysilver.com. And also we have a movie coming up about abortion at the Del Rey Movies of Del Rey, which show what it was like to try to get abortion before it was legalized. And then we're going to have a discussion about abortion rights. That's coming up as well. I believe that's on Thursday, and you can find out about that in your on Lador Va-Dor's website. So go on ladorvador.org, find out these activities. Thank you for joining us.